All right, so I know a lot of you, there are some folks here that I don't know. Thank you for coming. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I feel a little bad that Mike Bromocamp's not here because Mike's been a very important person to me in that Olsen Thielen's a client and has been a client since 2009. Mike's also been very supportive of me both personally and professionally, and so I owe a lot to Mike Bromocamp, and even though he's not here, I'm giving thanks to him. And thank you to Olsen Thielen and EBITDA Partners. Over the years, I've gotten to know the EBITDA Partners people very well. And so again, thank you for coming. Thank you for EBITDA Partners for having me. And thank you for Olsen Thielen for hosting us today. So the guts of this presentation were created about 5 years ago, or at least the first part, and that somebody at the university called me and asked me, said, hey, will you come talk about venture capital? I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. When is it? And I put it down on my calendar. He said, well, I'll give you some more details later. I got on my calendar, and they start marketing it, and I see some email, and it says, the things I learned in my failures in venture capital. And it's like, wow, nobody kind of sprung that one on me. The only good news was there's a panel, and there are 3 or 4 of us, so I could kind of, hide into the background a little bit with everybody. It wasn't just me. So I did today an offshoot of that, added some things, and kind of said, hey, what did I learn over this period of time? And so that's where we're at. I started in the investment industry in the late 80s. I did investment research for a couple of years, and that led me to doing investment banking for a few years. And then one of my investment banking clients was a venture capital firm, and that opened the door to me going into the venture capital industry. Truthfully, I had no idea what venture capital was when I was in college, and didn't know until I kind of got into the investment community. It still was kind of under the radar, and that actually is part of my story and part of me feeling very blessed in what I have had an opportunity to do, in that Buddy Ruvelson, who knows or knew Buddy Ruvelson? Actually, no hands, okay. Buddy Ruvelson was one of the people who started venture capital in the whole United States, and he was right here in town. And it probably would be a stretch for me to say that he was a mentor, but I had a chance through the various jobs I had in the Minnesota Venture Capital Association to have a lot of interaction with him. Super wise guy, and heard a lot of wonderful stories and learnings from him. Bob Ziccarelli, is anybody who know Bob Ziccarelli? One hand, Bob Ziccarelli from the 60s started venture capital at Norris Venture Capital, and I had a chance to work with Bob Ziccarelli. Dan Haggerty from the 70s, Norm Dan from the 70s, Andy Greenshields from the 70s, and so I had a chance to kind of grow up hearing from people who really launched the venture capital industry, and that was very helpful to me. My oldest just graduated from college, and he started his first job a couple of weeks ago. Actually graduated a semester early. So for those of you who've had kids go through the college scene, you know that that's a real positive. And I talked to him about, hey, what do you want to do? And I said, look to see who's your boss and who your mentors are going to be, and because those folks are going to be the ones that help you get to where you want to go. And so I've been blessed to work with a lot of wonderful people over the years in venture capital. At Piper Jaffray in investment banking, David Crosby was who I reported to, and David, for anybody who knows David's a wonderful guy. Gary Smaby in the technology industry, you had a chance to learn from Gary. And there are all these just wonderful, masterful, wise people that I've had a chance to work from, and kept my eyes and ears open for a lot of years, and truthfully just have had a lot of war stories. So I'm kind of like the minor league scout that sees a young baseball pitcher and knows that baseball pitcher is a good pitcher, or somebody in the movie industry that's seen a million scripts in the movie industry. I've seen a lot of deals, and a lot of them have failed, and a lot of them have worked, and I have had basically this database, this personal database of experiences, life experiences, work experiences that I've stored up here, and I'm going to bring some of that. So I'm breaking it into 3 parts. The first 10 is going to be, hey, what did I learn on deals that didn't work? The second 10 is going to be, what did I learn from deals that did work? And then the third 10 is going to be, what happened in certain scenarios that I did some efforts and the outcomes were good. And so like these are kind of high lever, high value kinds of points that I added value to companies that I was involved in. And then the other part in thinking about this talk is that an entrepreneur goes through an experience of, hey, I'm going to start a business, and then I'm probably going to bootstrap it and do some things, and then I'm going to maybe get some family to give me some money, and then maybe I get some angel money, and then maybe I go to a bank, and then maybe I get venture, maybe your private equity, but there's this whole life cycle of getting money. And then if they get big enough, somebody like Jeff might help them either sell or they grow further, and then they go to an investment banking firm and they want to raise money. Then they might go back to Jeff and they might want to sell at that point. But there's this whole continuum of all these different stops, and I've done all those. I've started companies and I've gone all the way to selling companies, and so I have this lens through this whole continuum of the business growing process. And then the other thing that I think in putting this presentation together, that process across stages also means about verticals. So there's a lot of people in here, Steve masterful with communications and branding and positioning, and I'd like to think that if I'm running half as fast as he is, that I'm doing pretty well. So I know a lot about a lot of different things. I don't go all the way deep into one, but I see how it all fits across the continuum of a business and kind of that 360-degree view. And then the outcome, as Cliff said, the outcome that I'm focused on is shareholder value. So somebody says, hey, I'm doing this with my business and it's going great and it's doing this and it's that. And in my head, I'm like, well, that part of the business isn't worth crap. The part over here that's more profitable, that's the one that you should be focused on. And so the idea of all this business stuff translating shareholder value is kind of the lens and the continuum I look through. So anyway, so this goes back to the late 80s and some experiences and comes to the day. And then I think it's not a good story unless you say something that says, hey, I really missed that one. Well, I have worked on a couple of projects that made 15 to 20 times their money. I have not worked on anything that made 100 times or anything like that. But I was sitting next to Michael Dell in the summer of 1988, and he was on his road show. And I was not smart enough to write out a check. In fact, the business was miserable at that time. They were hemorrhaging money. They couldn't raise it. They were raising money like every other month because their business was so unprofitable. I was like, how are they going to compete with Compaq and IBM and stuff like that? So I wrote up some notes and I brought it. And fortunately, it wasn't my call to make, buy, or sell. I was just there to gather information. But I did not buy. And so that was 88. And when they went private, that was 157 times from the time of the IPO to going private. So had I invested 1,000 or 10 or whatever, probably wouldn't be standing here. My life trajectory might have been a little different. Nonetheless, so that was kind of the one thing that I didn't either see, and that's actually part of what we talk about here is, it's tough to really kind of see forward 5 steps. Maybe easy to see forward 1 step, but maybe not 5. Also probably should say thanks to a couple other people. My father's sitting over here, wave to everybody. My dad's there, and then a bunch of other people I've worked with, including Darren Lynch in the back. Irish Titan has done a lot for me over the years and have had a lot of clients get help from Darren's firm. All right, so off we go. So I worked at all these different places. Kind of one thing, again, with my son just starting his career, I just said, hey, don't worry about what's going to happen in 5 years. Just get on it. Something that you're happy with, you're excited about, that you're going to have a good boss, a good mentor, and the doors just kind of open. And again, did investment research for a couple of years, did investment banking for a couple of years, and then just got on this venture capital train and have done a couple of different things. Venture capital is kind of like the old Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. Anybody remember that? There's a lot of different flavors, and venture capital has them all, as does private equity. And so I've had a chance to do a couple of different things there. And then the first 10. So the first 10, again, finding success through failure. So these are things that I learned when deals went bad, and kind of the old adage is you're going to learn more on the deals that go bad than the deals that work. And the other kind of irony of the whole thing is the deals that aren't working suck up your time. So now you're spending time on the deals that don't work, and then the deals that work where you're going to get your return, you're not spending time because they're working, which is not really technically how it should be, and so you always kind of have to fight that with your time and stuff like that. But anyway, so the deals that didn't work, what did I learn? First one, smart as we all think we are, and you go through this process of doing your due diligence and all these other things, and the reality is the economy matters. The economy drives it. The wind's at your back, life is good, the wind's in your face, boy, you have to swim twice as hard to get to the same place. So, for example, I made an investment in 2001 in January, and in April 2001, the market cracked and tanked, and that investment went into financial services. Was I any more smart in January than I was in April? No. Had I waited and had it on track to make that investment in May, I would have been a lot smarter because I wouldn't have made that investment because the market cracked and that whole category that we were trying to sell into, financial services, had changed. And so you really want to focus on, or at least acknowledge the impact that the economy is going to have. Ben, you're in the stock market. I don't know if you know this, but from 2000 to 2009, that decade, the stock market had an overall average return of minus 4.5%. It was the worst 10-year history of the United States stock market, 2000 and 2009. Well, guess what? Sherpa Partners was investing and trying to do stuff in that period of time. So, am I any smarter or not? The reality was the economy was going to have a heavy-duty impact on what was happening. And so just be aware of and acknowledge what's going on in the economy because that's going to shape what you're doing. All right, so given that, and certainly the economy today is at a better place, and one could argue, depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on, the economy might be poised to be going forward and doing good things in the next handful of years, potentially with lower taxes, lower regulation, et cetera. But in this market, I believe the Minneapolis market, from a financial perspective, we're a second-tier market. The velocity of money here is less. People are not willing to take the same amount of risk. There's not as much money available. And I'd say oftentimes folks on either coast play with kind of monopoly money. The money they play with doesn't have the same value. And so we're kind of swimming upstream as it relates to other markets, in particular Silicon Valley, Research Triangle, and other kind of hotbeds of early stage companies. And so from my perspective, the financial risk of a company is substantial. And for Minnesota, that's different than in Silicon Valley or other money centers. And so when I'm looking at a deal, it may be the best product, the best service, the best mousetrap ever. But if I don't think they have a path to either get funding or get to being self-sustainable, then for me, that's an overriding thing. So I would rather take a half step back on the opportunity, take a half step back on the team, take a half step back on the business model, all those things, to take less risk on the financial side of the equation. And mostly that's just how do you get funded. So in Minnesota, I give a lot of weight to this, and something that unfortunately I've learned the hard way a couple times. All right, so number two, I should say this was intended to be an interactive discussion, and so if somebody has a question, please raise your hand. In between the sections of 10, I'm going to give you all a chance to talk to one another and share ideas kind of amongst little groups, and then I'll write those down to see if some of the things you learned from deals that have failed or deals that have worked kind of jive with some of the stuff that I've done. So you'll have some small group time, and we'll have some time doing stuff together. But if there's questions along the way, please raise your hand. All right, so the second thing, going the wrong way, which if you're doing an early stage company, sometimes feels like you're doing, and maybe you are, but getting traction is very important. And you need to do that because you're going against the grain, you're swimming upstream, you come up with a new idea, you're doing all these things that maybe don't jive with what other people see or do, and other people are saying, well, that's a stupid idea, or how's that going to work? And so you get a lot of negative feedback, and so getting validation, some validation is very important. Nowadays, minimal viable product's a term that people will jump on. Different way to say it is go get a couple of customers, even if you heavily discount them to get them, or even if you give it to them for free in a sense to get in the door to learn some things. But you need validation. Why? Because being wrong and being early look identical. And so for a long period of time, you have to live in this space of, am I wrong, or are we on to something? So the sooner you can get something that validates what you're doing, the better. So again, this is really important and something to keep in mind. Again, being wrong and being early look exactly the same. All right, number 3, more family stories here. I'll tell you a few because they're a big part. For those of you who don't know, I have 4 children. great relationship with my dad, so the kids are important. So number 3, this is the 3rd basketball championship in a row for De La Salle. My son's right in the middle, and we talked about that. It's like, okay, there's going to be lots of pictures, get into a good spot, and so he's always right in the middle. And so anyway, so this was De La Salle's 3rd straight state championship. They have 5 now, but number 3, Eli was on. So what's the 3rd lesson on deals that went bad is focus on things that are a must-have versus a nice-to-have. Focus on things that people want versus that they just need, or that they need and want and must-have versus just a nice-to-have. A lot of deals come up with something like, oh, this is going to be 5% better, or gee, this kind of makes a modest improvement, or this, that, and the other thing. No, you want something that's critical. This is why before, or in the earlier days of med device investing, it was easier to make money because there were a lot of kind of big markets, must-have products to have. If you save somebody from dying, that's a must-have product to have. Or if you're selling a bomb suit, that's a, you're not going to go out and try to disarm bombs without a bomb suit, right? So having an explicit problem that you solve that's a must-have versus a nice-to-have is very important. And in the med device industry's actually interesting side note on what's going on in that category, the FDA, the bar's gone up so hard that a bunch of the venture money's not going there because the timelines have dragged down. And return on investment, the enemy of return on investment is time. And so because of that, med device investing is under a little bit of trouble. But think med device, think bomb suits, things that are must-haves versus a nice-to-have would be a lesson that I've learned on deals that haven't worked. Okay, state championship number 4. So Eli's holding the trophy this time. So he's up the pecking order on his spot on the team. Bigger role, bigger name, whatever. Anyway, so Eli's again in the middle. 4th thing I've learned, and this goes back, ties in a little bit to something I said earlier, is you go through your due diligence, and you think you're really smart, and you're like, oh, I did this, and I did this, and I talked to these people, and the market's this big, and you're going down this list, and it's like, ooh, I'm using all those brain cells, and I'm talking to all those smart people, I'm doing this, that, and the other thing, when the reality of the whole thing, no matter how smart you think you are and how much work you do, the reality of the whole thing is the market ready for you? I mean, you can do all this fancy MBA stuff, and I have my MBA so I can crack jokes about people with MBAs. You do all this fancy MBA stuff, and then the market doesn't buy because they're not ready. You're either too far ahead or you missed it or whatever. So you can do all this stuff back here, but the market will dictate what's going to happen, and that's why you want to get out and try to get some validation as soon as you can and focus on and listen to what's happening in the market. So again, the 4th thing here, the 4th lesson was doing your due diligence, but acknowledging that the market is going to tell you whether it's ready and absorb what you have or not. Okay, lesson number 5, aim high. There's too much, when I see deals here in this part of the country, a little bit too much of conservatism and trying to make too much noise. Hey, we're going to be the greatest ever at this big new thing, and there's not enough of that thinking. Norwegian, so I can crack Norwegian jokes. Anyway, there's too much like, oh, we don't want to seem too big, we don't want to ruffle too many feathers, we don't want to shoot high enough. And the problem with not shooting high enough is that second place still is worth a trophy, but if you don't shoot up here and maybe you miss and you're still here, but if you shoot here and you miss, you're kind of went sideways. So if you shoot high enough and you don't quite do it, you're still in a good place. But if you're not shooting high enough, it doesn't matter, and truthfully, nobody ever hits their business plan. So the lesson here is if you're just looking for 15% whiter with the detergent, or the next kind of toothpaste that's a little bit brighter and makes your teeth shinier, that's not as good as like, hey, we're really going to shoot for something here and try to do it. And a side note back on the Minnesota being more conservative, you get sucked into that thinking yourself. So I'd encourage folks to try to let go a little bit of that, shoot a little higher, and second place is still pretty good. All right, so sixth thing I learned on deals that went bad. When you meet someone, even here, there's only 2 emotions that you have. There's a continuum, But the first emotion that you have when you meet somebody is they don't make you feel comfortable. The second emotion that they might make you feel is comfortable. So there's a continuum. Maybe you're right in the middle, but it's either or usually. So what's the problem with somebody who doesn't put people at ease when they're interacting? And the problem with that with business people is they have to continually be in sales mode. They're trying to raise money. They're trying to bring in new employees. They're trying to do partnership deals. They're talking to the press. These have to be communicators, people. They have to make folks feel comfortable. And when they're nervous or they don't kind of exude that feeling with someone when they connect, they're not going to be able to do those things. So in assessing, for sure, the founder, CEO, but also the management team, is that group going to make the outside world at ease? Because again, they're continually selling, and that's not the widget, just the widget or the mousetrap or what have you. So again, there's a continuum. Probably a lot of people are right in the middle, maybe not quite all the way to like they're perfectly making folks feel comfortable versus nervous, but that's the continuum that you have to weigh people on because again, those teams are in sales mode. Okay, number 7. When companies are going down the road and they're doing things that they don't know what to do, or maybe it's an engineering team that doesn't know marketing or communications, or maybe it's market people, but they need to bring in the technologies, this, that, and the other thing. The groups are continually expanding, as I just talked about on the recruiting, and lots of times they'll say, well, we need to bring in an expert in this domain, an expert with a title, whether they're a CMO or a CFO or head of HR or whatever. So they're building their team and they're looking for experts. And in their head, I don't think they ask enough as to whether the skills that those people had were transferable. And the main thing that I'm referring to here is big company versus small company, and I see this all the time. It's the big company person going to the small company because they think the grass is greener doing this entrepreneurial thing, whatever the heck that means. Or I was talking about it earlier, they got right-sized because of what corporate America, and they're trying to figure out where to do, and they go down to the small company, and they didn't realize, holy crap, I got to make the copier work. And I got to make my own coffee, and you mean I don't have somebody in marketing that I just call up and say, hey, take this presentation and make it look good for me? There's like no resources. So it like goes from Pentagon, centralized war planning to guerrilla tactics, and it's a different animal. And so you might get that CMO, that head of HR, the CFO, the CEO, whatever, but those worlds are totally different. It's like Spanish and French. Yeah, there's some similarities and you can make those things. But anyway, so folks that do the recruiting and building their teams, I think you really got to see how many of those skills are really transferable, and right at the top of the list, is it a big company to small company flip? Rarely it goes the other way because the big company's like, well, that guy's not going to listen to us, so we're not going to hire him. So usually it's not small company to big, it's big to small. All right, so the 8th thing that I've learned on Deals Gone Bad, who read Crossing the Chasm? A couple of people. All right, not enough. All right, I have this book here. This is a Bible, like top 10 things I've ever read. Who would like to read this book? You were the first hand that I saw. Well, I owe you one too. All right, so Crossing the Chasm, what's the premise here? On the left side, you got the innovators and the early adopters, and then the big one here is the early majority, and this is the market that most people are aiming towards, and the chasm is the little spot here, and you got a real small sliver. He actually wasn't created here. Damn, that marketing department that I said, make this look pretty, they didn't give me the innovator thing. Anyway, so you got innovators, and then you go to the early adopters, and then you have this chasm. And the chasm, and in particular, Crossing the Chasm talks about is, while there's a lot of technology stuff, it's not all about technology, is folks try to aim for that big market too much into the sweet spot and not enough about finding a beachhead they use in the book or the land and expand thing. So early stage company or a new company trying to get into the market, you can't be all things to all people. You have to pick a spot, and you have to focus on that spot, and you have to go right there and solve a problem with a fully baked product. And that's another thing the book talks about, is that folks get a product that does like 10 different things about 80% right, instead of doing 2 things 100% right, and getting into a market that you can have some success and then go out from there into other parts of that market, or have those businesses then refer you to either to other businesses, or you can build yourself around a vertical or whatnot. So crossing the chasm, the main premise, boiling it down to another visual here, is you don't want to water down your efforts. Especially as an early stage company, you need to focus, and you don't have to have the solution for the big market. You just need a solution that part of the market will resonate with, and you can land and expand and go from there. And with a particular early stage company where you have limited resources, you have you don't have enough people, there's not enough time in the day, you don't have enough money, et cetera, and so you really need to focus, and Crossing Chasm talks to that. Okay, 9th thing that I've learned from deals that didn't work, too many people get hung up on the valuation of their company. They're out raising money, and they got their mind set on a particular value. And Jeff, I'm sure you see that when people are trying to sell their companies. They have this, hey, my company's worth X. Well, your company's only worth what the market will tell you it's going to be worth. And people raising money do this all the time. And they say, well, I don't want to take that money because it's not at the valuation I want. Well, truthfully, you're better off taking the money, running and making progress. And if the company has success, you're going to have success. And what's the difference between a lot of money and close to a lot of money? Not a lot, right? So a lot of people, deals crater because they get hung up on the valuation. And the other thing, the valuation has nothing to do with the other terms. And so this just carries too much weight. Too many people get hung up on the valuation, and if they get hung up on the valuation, they're not really focused on the things that are most important. They also might get off track with things that are the shiny object. Oh, look, squirrel over there. Or not enough on like the key things like, gee, what's our sales model and what's our strategy to do this? And they lose track of the things that are most important. So valuation is less important and not enough focus on the few things that are important. Okay, number 10. Things that I've learned in deals that gone bad is focus on what you can control. And this applies not just to the business world, but to your personal world as well. And a good lesson here is like, hey, what can I really do? So if you're in a market and it happens to be raining, you can't do anything about that part of it, but you can get an umbrella and keep yourself out of the rain. So focus on what's happening in the market or with your company that you can control. And if there's a bad economy, or from 2000 to 2009, things just are tough, then you have to do things that you can take care of. Like, for instance, maybe you don't have enough of marketing budget, and you do a little bit of your own PR stuff, and you become friends with somebody in the press, and you call them up, like I did this week. So you do stuff to take care of yourself, and you do stuff on the things, focus on the things you can control. And then the other part of that is if you're focusing on those things that you can control, you're acknowledging that, guess what? Fate, luck, higher power, serendipity, whatever you want to call it, has a lot to do with it. And so if you just kind of tend to your own stuff, and then you hope that you get a few breaks along the way, the economy turns, there's a good article in the newspaper about a category, the press latches onto it, who knows what. But focus on the things that you can control. Acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff that happens, and doing those things will hopefully keep you a little bit out of trouble. All right, so I want to spend a few minutes on things that you've learned from either projects that didn't work, companies that didn't work, investments that didn't work, clients that didn't work. Are there some themes that either we can tie into stuff that I've done, or totally different things? I just want to make a list that might be helpful to you all to hear from other folks in the audience. All right, so let's start on this side of the room. Just a couple of things that happened that we can add to our list of, hey, what did we learn from things that didn't work out? Deals that went bad, products that went bad, efforts that went bad, whatever. Anything over in this column over here? You got to have one good thing. All right, yeah.
We learned that diversification. A lot of client-related businesses that they're selling to have multiple revenue streams.
Diversification, multiple revenue streams, yes. So from the venture capital perspective or the investment banking perspective, a business that has a bunch of customers that are 0.5% of revenue each are great. A company that has 10 customers that are driving, I don't know, what's a painful amount of the top 10 customers, 30% of revenue? 50, 30, 50, so if you have a concentration of customers, that is going to be an issue. Anything else on that side that you want to add to the list? All righty, moving on. This column here.
Where it's all hands on deck. The idea being that oftentimes you may have a shared vision, but the management team is not all together in terms of everybody's going down their own silo trying to get to that vision.
Yep.
And the reality is in a startup, oftentimes you have to work outside your area, together to help each other to get, the issue at hand dealt with, and so that you're all focused together.
Yeah, so the focus issue might be that you don't have the right skill sets and you're wearing multiple hats. The issue might be there's political dynamics amongst the team, power thing. It might be, hey, I think the direction is here. The other person, 10 degrees off, whatever. Go for football coaches. Hey, let's roll the boat or whatever his thing is. Make sure we're all going the right direction. All right, good one. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else over on this one? Yeah. Ego. I don't know that that's just the founders, but we'll add it there. Founders' ego. Not sure that it's always just the founder, but ego, huge problem. Yeah, agreed. For a lot of different ways, whether it's just getting the thing up and running, or whether it's strategic things and management, or as we just discussed 5 minutes ago, it's at the end and you somehow talk yourself into thinking that this business is worth more than it should be, whatever. So yeah, ego, big problem. Big problem. Anything else on, yes?
One more thing is, when's the right time or what's the right way to acknowledge failure and it's time to back up and move on before you run out of cash?
That might be its own conversation, but when do you acknowledge failure and move on? I'm a little stubborn, so I probably move on a little less quick than other people. But if you're going back to the first thing I said of trying to get validation points and maybe focusing on key validation points versus something that's way down the road with a lot of time and money, and obviously there's certain things, medical technologies, for example, that you can't do that way. But failure, either points or acknowledgement and moving on is certainly an issue, and trying to decide. And another thing, the old saying about good money after bad. In the venture world, when you're writing out checks, I think you probably have some serious conversations maybe a little sooner than if you're just spending nights and weekends on something and you're just kind of percolating it going forward. All right, anything else over here? All right, in here. Whoop, I'll get to yours. Hold on. This one, right here.
There were actually about three things.
Okay.
Group here. One was playing on your strengths versus trying to be who you're not.
Yep. Playing on your strengths. Yep.
Emotional purchase. Really not doing anything just sheerly on emotion.
Give me a little bit more on that.
Well, unfortunately, that's my example.
Oh.
Buying a business on just emotion, only not doing the due diligence, and that's actually the third one that we talked about.
Okay, so not doing enough due diligence, agreed.
That would be it.
Doing too much on emotion, not being able, which goes into our conversation of an exit, not being able to kind of detach. So you get hooked into something. Hey, I've spent already a bunch of time on this. or I really like these people, or this is a good market, but you're kind of sucked in emotionally. Yeah, and then what was it was the due diligence checklist?
You mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll call it maybe over-optimism with a tinge of greed and not enough due diligence.
Greed, overly optimistic. Yeah, the greed's a big one. Powerful human emotion to detach from. Anything else over here? Okay, over here.
Something that I've learned is think about how your business looks from the perspective of your investor and your customer.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Think really carefully about how your business looks to your potential investors and your potential customers. And one thing in particular about that, which is a subset, is the people dynamic. If you're starting a company with people that you've never worked with before, that's very different to the investors and the customers than for starting business with people you have worked with. And I learned the hard way that when you talk about ignoring problems in the market, ignoring problems in the team is also very important. And I started personally a business with somebody who was known to be litigious, known to be cranky, but was very wealthy. And it turned out that that was just oil and water, and our investors saw that that was going to be an issue before I did. And,
Yep.
and there's this lesson learned.
Yeah, the optics of stuff,
Yeah.
right? The business model, just the perception. Somebody who's got no ties to the business, they come in and like, what's their immediate gut reaction to like, well, this person, even though they have a big checkbook, is a real pain in the butt. And we all know that trying to do business with people and pain in the butt's not a lot of fun. So the optics of something, yep, good one. Anything else over on this side? Yep.
We had one where, and you mentioned it a little bit, trying to do too much of things at 80% versus, doing two things very, very well at 100%. And along with that is the next step, once the market's saturated, what's the next step for your business?
Okay.
That kind of folds into too, that the optimism of the founder or the primary person that might not see that their product isn't as great or won't get the same market share that they anticipate.
Yep.
So they're overselling it and not
Yep.
preparing for a lesser share.
Overselling it because their greed is kicking in and they're trying to make their business happen.
And they just believe in it. So
Yeah, and then there's, you're also, you're not going to jump out of the airplane and think you're going to knit the parachute on the way down unless you really believe in what you're doing. So some of that just might be what they're doing. So tempering the enthusiasm that other folks have, at least in your own mind, and doing your own due diligence to make sure they're telling me one thing, but guess what, when I do my own homework, it's not connecting. Okay, one last one over here.
we have one last
Oh, one more.
one too that we've experienced is the ethics and whether your values are aligned. You
Okay.
mentioned the personality traits of the litigious person. In some cases, as things get more and more stressful, those pieces of personalities that in a non-stressful situation won't come out, all of a sudden you start to see people doing things that would be unethical to do and sometimes illegal, but they feel they needed to get it done to get to the end.
Yep, yep. So again, deciding who you're going to work with on the front end. And then to one of your other points, which I didn't comment on, is kind of where you're going to go 3 steps from now. So thinking of the business game more like chess rather than checkers. Yep, yep, good point. All right. Okay, great. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate that. If anybody wants this list, I can pull that together and you can reach out to me and I can give that to you. But I just thought it'd be helpful to hear from other folks what you have learned in your own universes. All right. So what's the next section here? Whoop, I got a timeout. Technology. All righty. All right. Okay, so on the deal that won, the deals that won, the things that worked, what did I learn? And the first one goes back to the team. We can go into this greater detail. In some respects, it gets overblown and you kind of lose track of that's really what it is, but I'm here to tell you that's really what it is. For all, many of the things we said here, so you got to have the team. And then one thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough, and I can't remember where I heard it, it was Dave talking about have they worked together before? You can take, they don't have to be world beaters, but guess what? They've done it 3 other places. There's a local company that's a client of mine, OpSource. It's a SaaS product tackling the enterprise market. And they all worked together for 13 years at Lawson. And then they went and did other stuff, did their own thing for like about 5 years. And then they got back together to work on this business OpSource they've now been doing for 7 years. So this core group of guys have been working for 20 years together back across their careers. And then Centera is a drone business I'm working with. And the founders started working on drones 20 years ago at Lockheed Martin. And there's an engineering team of somewhere around 20 people. 7 or 8 of the people go all the way back, not all the way to 20 years, but close to 20 years that have been working together with him and have followed him to a couple of other spots, going back to Lockheed Martin. So obviously 2 of my clients followed this slide right here. So have they worked together? Have they had success together? Have they figured out their idiosyncrasies? Stuff like that. All right, so teams, teamwork. Second thing is, are they listeners? Folks that don't listen aren't going to get it for a lot of different reasons. Number one, they're going to be a painful client to work with. So I don't think anybody out there needs another painful client to work with. So the first thing is they're not going to listen to you. And then the second thing, they're not going to listen to the market. And I guess I would say, argue that if you're not listening, you're not learning. And back to this kind of conservative Minnesota thing, hey, we don't want to pivot, we don't want to do something new because we got on this track. And my perspective would be if you haven't pivoted like 3, 4, 5 times, you're not listening to the market. So the folks that are listeners, I think you're going to have a lot more success with, both from a professional standpoint as well as a personal standpoint. So do they listen? Back to number 3, Eli in the middle. When you're saying, all right, well, who's on the team? Do we have any EOS folks in the audience? Users or implementers? User, I saw a hand over. Implementer, user implementer. Integrator, visionary, who's the operator person and who's the driver. Does a business need both? Certainly from an EOS perspective, they would say yes. I would say yes. So then it's a question of, well, gee, at the front end, maybe you don't have both, so which one's better? And the place I'm going to go is industry guru. So the visionary in my head is even a little different than the industry guru. The industry guru really knows the industry. They may not necessarily say, here's the chess game 5 steps out, but I really know that customer set. I know what they like, I know what they want, I know what they eat, I know when they sleep, I know their habits, that they really are an industry product guru. And Eric Teipel at Centera, been working on drones for 20 years, he is an industry guru. And so yes, totally agree from an EOS perspective, you have these different personalities and they're important. But for me, the folks that really, really knew that category are the ones that have had success. All right, so the book that goes with this one, who has read Innovator's Dilemma? Only a couple. All right, Innovator's Dilemma, top 10, should read it, must read, add it to your reading list. Who wants the Innovator's Dilemma? A lot of hands. I think you went first, sir. Innovator's Dilemma is a lot about how the big companies kind of get painted into a corner and they can't adapt, and it takes somebody who's looking ahead and it moves the utility curve down and to the right, and so you end up kind of like the Michael Dells of the world. I wasn't smart enough. Actually, had I read the Innovator's Dilemma, I would have said, Michael, you're an Innovator's Dilemma guy. But Michael Dell's stuff was happening before that book got written, but that's why there's room for folks like Dell Computer. Anyway, so I look for and really appreciate industry gurus. Number 4, Eli right in the middle, holding the trophy this time. Focus goes back to some of the stuff we said before, saying, hey, you dilute your efforts, you don't have enough people, time, money, all those things. This is just the opposite. People who really zero in, and they're out there. I'm sure the folks that are either using or implementing EOS, you see this. There are people that just zero in. And their to-do list is not 100 things long, it's 3. 5, right? And I see this with early stage companies all the time, trying to do too much, the kind of proverbial boil the ocean thing. And the people that focus will get there further, and they're focusing on the right stuff. Kind of the inverse of what we said earlier, shiny objects. It's not the, ooh, squirrel kind of thing. It's like these are the real critical business drivers. Value creators, creating shareholder value. There was a quote, Wayne Gretzky, about why you're so good. And he said, well, I skate to where the puck's going to be. And so this is kind of like, hey, you got to focus on the critical things, and the critical things need to be the high-value drivers. Okay, number 5 on deals that have worked. Dysfunction. All right. Instead of saying who's worked at a company that was dysfunctional, let me go the other way. Who has not worked somewhere that was dysfunctional? All right, no hands. All right. The other would be family of origin. Who did not grow up in a family of origin that had some family dysfunction? Okay, just kidding. Anyway, all right, so every business has dysfunction, and the reality is the successful ones figure out how to deal with it. And you're still going to have a problematic employee, or you're not rowing the boat in the same direction. You know, there's going to be stuff. And the question is not if there's going to be stuff, it's when there's going to be stuff, and are you going to be able to handle it? So the companies that do better handle it better. All teams have this. They need to resolve their differences, need to get everybody on track, and then kind of jokingly talk about, you know, putting the fun in dysfunction, right? So it's like, okay, embrace that. Got some stuff going on. Don't shy away from it, because if you shy away from it, it just is going to compound, et cetera. So you got to dive in there, solve the dysfunction, and the teams that work and the companies that have success figure out how to take care of that. All right, number 6, culture and engagement, 2 buzzwords, and it's a little hard to necessarily define exactly what those are. It's kind of one of those it things. They either have it or they don't. You kind of know it when you see it, but it's hard to put your finger on. And I would say that the companies that are working and having success, and the investments that have worked, have this. And it's a little bit of the it factor. Kind of like with music or movies or whatever. You don't really necessarily know. There are people that can help with this. I certainly have my ideas. But I'm looking for the people that have workforces that are into it and giving you their all. And I guess for me, one of the things that I've seen with the businesses that have been successful is they have a culture that has a sense of urgency. And some of that is my age and generational difference from certain people coming into the workforce these days, and most of all of our ages, is there's a generational thing of what gets people jazzed and energized. But the companies that work are generally the companies that are working hard, but embrace that kind of work hard, play hard thing. And David Crosby at Piper Jaffray, when I worked there a long time ago, really did a good job of this. Like, we're going to make it fun, and we're going to do stuff as a group, and we're going to get everybody rowing in the same direction, and we're building it. You know, it's kind of more of a team. It's more like a sports team, but we're all going to work hard. So the sense of urgency, I believe, or have seen a bunch of times with the companies that have had success, is part of that culture and part of how employees get engaged, get and stay engaged. Another saying David said was, make hay when the sun shines. I still use that, like, 25 years later. So make hay when the sun shines. All right, number 7, power of marketing and communications. I've seen over and over and over and over how this either can change the trajectory of a company, or a company that has the proverbial better mousetrap, but they don't do this part right. And kind of like the conservative Norwegian guy cracking jokes about that, because I'm that guy. I also can crack jokes about the MBA community, because I'm that guy too. So the paralysis by analysis kind of thing, there's too much number crunching and too much focus on that side, which you need, but this side has a significant impact in the world that we're in. And this goes back to, for me, many, many years, and I kind of would jokingly say I went from kind of the dark side, that finance guy and the MBA, to like, I think this rules the world. And when you're out trying to win customers and raise money and build awareness with the idea of you're about shareholder value, I think you have to do this stuff right. And it's not just about Twitter or Facebook. It's like the whole concept. It's about the packaging up of a story so people can engage with what you're doing and understand with what you're doing. Why is that important? In maybe about 2005, 2004, I had made an investment in Provation Medical. Company, when we invested, was doing about 3 years, but they're $3 million in revenue, but they were losing money, didn't have a full team, started by a doc, and had a lot of dysfunction. And over the course of a couple of years, we created a better team, fixed the dysfunction, and then from a market position standpoint, we went from a healthcare IT company that was a little drop in the bucket for $1 billion industry to market leader. We defined the category. We told the outside world what that category was, the terms that we wanted them to use, what those products needed to have, and then we brought that to the press, we brought that to the industry analysts, and we sold the world on our category. And oh, by the way, we just defined a game that we could be the winner. And then the outside world started grabbing that, and so we went from kind of an also-ran little small company in Minnesota that didn't mean anything to anybody to like, oh, there's this fast-growing category. Here's what it's called, and here's a market leader, and kind of the Gartner Group Magic Quadrant up and to the right. And so we created a universe that defined what we were doing, and the outside world got into it. And then when we sold, we were perceived to be the market leader at that point, doing about 16 to maybe 20 million in revenue, somewhere in there, and got a exit multiple that was about 2.5 times what the industry multiple was. So we sold ourselves as the industry leader, and we did that by doing this, and that led to not only a nice exit, but a very nice exit. All right, number 8. I think the overarching thing here is decisiveness, and the teams that win and the companies that win make decisions and move on and learn stuff and then move on and then learn some more stuff and then move on again. I think that this shows up most important in the personnel decisions, and they put up with dysfunction, negativity, people that aren't performing, et cetera, and they don't make the decision and move on. And so the folks that say, I'm going to do it now versus putting it off are probably the same kind of people who are going to make other business decisions that need to do it. And kind of the saying on that as well, you can fire them now or fire them later. Just a question of when, because they're either, again, causing dysfunction, not working, creating negativity. And the other thing here is that that person isn't just about their job. It bleeds over into the team. So now kind of the whole team or even the whole company is like, well, that person's not carrying their weight. And so the folks that the companies have done well, I've seen them make decisions and move on. Oh boy. All right, number 9. Intellectual property. I have a little bit of bias here in that Schwegman Lumberg Woosner has been a client since 2007. I was not as focused on intellectual property before I learned more about it, and probably investing in the last decade through Sherpa was part of it, and then Schwegman gave me more appreciation. But I really think that this adds value, especially for early stage companies, because you're creating boundaries for other competitors to not get at you, or to create things that create value. And I find this chart totally fascinating. All right, 40 years of the stock market from 75 to 2015, and the stock market used to value tangible assets, and now the stock market values intangible assets. So this has totally flipped in 40 years. So if you're talking about creating shareholder value, you are missing the boat if you're not assigning value here. Doesn't mean that your business is just about the intellectual property side of the equation. And the intellectual property, by the way, is not just patents. Most people think patents. There's a lot of other stuff to that. But you are missing the financial boat from a shareholder value perspective if you don't put some weight there. All right, number 10, financial controls. This would have been my plug for Mike Brimacomb if he was here. Hey, Mike, financial controls. No, I've actually seen where folks need to have the information to make good decisions. And Mike and Olsen Thielen can help with that. I'm sure there's a bunch of people in the audience that also could either help with that, but acknowledging that we have to have financial controls. We have to know what's going on because today's world, information is power. And you need to make decisions, and the decisions have to be on actionable data that go down super low to what's happening at the transaction level. Why are you winning? Why are you losing? What's being bought? What's being sold? And so you really need to make sure that you have the financial infrastructure in place to be able to make the decisions you need to do. All right, so that was 10 things that I learned from companies and deals that worked. Why don't you all take a couple of minutes? I'll do this one a little faster, but everybody go to those same groups and come up with a few items that you have learned from companies, products, efforts that worked. All right, so this time let's start over on that side of the room. What things did you learn from deals that worked?
We learned that EOS
EOS, all right.
being prevalent.
Yep.
Allows the focus. Along that same line is focusing on a niche in a market versus the whole market.
Yep.
Very, very good at a niche.
Yep.
And then the other thing we discussed is executives understanding their limitations and working around those limitations.
Understanding their limitations, so some self-awareness would be helpful, right? All right, anybody else over here? Dave?
That self-awareness thing is interesting because we were talking about how much you want to bite off of your venture. You know, do you want a safe return, more like a private equity kind of thing?
Yep.
You know, where it's going to be okay 2 or 3-fold.
Yep.
That's it. Or you want to shoot for the moon. I mean, and how many moonshots really work? I mean, the biggest product in the last 10 years, in my opinion, is probably the smartphone, right?
Right.
You tried to get a bunch of markets and make one. But how many failures along the way? We were talking about the Newton. Wasn't that the one? Or
Palm Pilot, yep.
A lot of failures on the way.
So I guess from my perspective, I'm going to put portfolio. And also I think some of that is back to that awareness of like, okay, well, what are you trying to do here? Is it a 2X you're after, or are you after 100X? And if you know you're after 100X, you can do different things. But you also need to build a portfolio of stuff because they're not all going to work no matter how smart you think you are and all the due diligence and all that. All right. Anybody else over there?
I'll speak up and say that we talked about marketing and really about, a brand had a message, what that they really want to get across, that those messages are different per audience and how using social media nowadays to help actually define that message before you even take it to a broader
Oh, yeah.
audience.
Yeah. You should have it in the can, 25 different things that you got ready to roll, and then you go tell your story. Yes, agreed. Anybody in here?
We kind of talked about some of those things in similar, understanding what the limit of that opportunity is, and once you realize that you kind of have defined that limit, don't be afraid to get out or find a strategic partner for whom that matters.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a home run.
Yep.
Singles, doubles, triples, all good.
Yep.
As long as it's a positive return. Don't stay in too long, or find somebody who's going to take that higher level risk if you can't be everything to everybody.
So in other words, back to the self-awareness, if you kind of know what you're capable of and you know kind of what you're shooting for, then hopefully you don't trick yourself into thinking you're something more or have different expectations or goals. Anybody else over here? Yep.
Fail fast.
Yep. Fail fast. Yep. Fail fast. No. Anybody else over here? All right. Oh.
A bit of a bias given what I do, but I would say owners and founders who depersonalize the business and it's not all about them. There's a management team and depth.
Depersonalize, yep. And that would kind of also go back into the detaching and the self-awareness, and that's kind of wrapped up into this big thing. All right, anybody over here? Yes, Steve.
Don't have so much pride in always feeling like you have to have a new idea, but recognize that sometimes old ideas were not executed properly and can bring a new light to
Sure.
a company. And the example I used, Select Comfort had hired an agency because they ran out of money, and that idea was a sleep number bed, and when a new CEO came in, that really basically tripled or quadrupled the size.
Yep. My dad's buddy Mike DeMond helped design the bleach in the pen for your for a new product. So old product, a pen, bleach, old product. You take two platforms, put them together. So it's kind of the old is new and the new is old. All right. Anybody else over here? Oh, over there. Yes.
One thing I would say that when you're in startup mode is make sure that all your people are pretty frugal, right? That you don't have to buy the fanciest of anything. You know, you're trying to create a product that has functionality.
Frugal. Yep. Yep. Presentation I have done in the past. I have a couple of sawhorses and an old desk or a door across the sawhorses, and that's the desk. That was actually a Buddy Ruvelson thing. It was like if you go to their office and they got all the fancy new furniture, not a good deal. All right. Anybody else over there? Yes, Ben. No and not now. You want to expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah.
What we talked about, Rick, was no and NOW and KNOW.
Oh, sorry.
So just because somebody says no now doesn't mean that because they don't know, understand, appreciate, and maybe it's just bad timing. Maybe it's just.
So is this a product thing or a sales thing? Both? Okay, yeah, I'd argue. So if you don't have, for instance, if you don't have your sales process down and you try to premature close, you haven't demonstrated enough value, or you're not marketing it well enough and you haven't demonstrated value, you can't get to the close. And certainly from a product standpoint, there's that issue as well. All right, okay, so thank you for your participation. Again, if anybody wants these things, I can get those to you. All right, the last piece of the puzzle here is adding value along the way. What have I learned? Everybody always needs kind of like a marriage counselor. And I do that sometimes, but the business team, in particular the CEO, they need a confidant that they can work through their issues. And why? Because there's always a lot of tough stuff, and they have to constructively solve those problems, and lots of times the CEO doesn't have that, and that's a problem. So I can play that role, other people out in the audience can play that role, but having a confidant to work through their problems. Number two, you have to have the right accounting and financial systems. I touched on that earlier, but the reality in today's world is if you don't have those things down, then you're not going to be able to do budgeting. You're not going to be able to manage the business down to the transaction level. You're going to not have a handle on cash flow. You just really need to have this stuff down to make the budgeting, monetary side of the world work. I've seen that a bunch of times, and I can help bring that to the table and seen the value for companies do that. Upgrading the team. Lots of times people need to upgrade their team. And seen dramatic improvement with just one person or certainly multiple people. But when you bring certain expertise to the table, plugging that hole to build a specific function within a company, or maybe it's an advisory board or whatever, but when you bring this much needed expertise to the table, you can see significant impact and improvement in the business. Number four, selling's complicated. Scott, raise your hand, Scott. Scott can help you on that front. Selling's very complicated. And people say, well, I want to grow. Growing is easy. Just, go out and sell more. Well, no, it's not quite as simple as that. It's a complicated endeavor, and folks need to peel that process apart, figure out what's working, what's not working, what are the holdups, at what step in the process are you falling off the tracks, et cetera, et cetera. And then the corollary with that is marketing. McLeod helped me with this presentation. I thought they did a great job, but I've seen significant improvement at companies where they've helped companies define their market position, competing against other market entrants, points of differentiation and really doing a good job on A, understanding your selling process and fixing this, and then B, how you're packaging. Number 5, touched on this earlier, the PR communications war. Just earlier this week, called somebody in the press that I wanted to tell about a story, hoping this person would bite. And then that same afternoon, the person that bid on the story sent an email to a venture capitalist saying, hey, you should look at this company. I had no idea that that venture capitalist might be interested in this particular company, and it was just an ancillary benefit of me just trying to work the press. You do not know what's going to happen when the press or you start to get some buzz around your companies. I also have seen 7-figure investments come from a cold call because they've seen something in the press. Big deal here. Public relations, communications, the power of the press. It's kind of a little bit old school, but on the other hand, I've seen it happen time and time again. So that's something that can make a significant impact. And then, who said this about partnerships? It was over here somewhere, right in here. Thank you for the preface to this slide. I think too many companies are myopic in their lens. They aren't thinking big enough. They aren't saying, well, hey, are there new products that we might partner with somebody, or might somebody want to distribute our products? So products, get after new markets, get after different distribution, get after other technologies. I've done this, I've seen it. And so too many companies, yes, you want to be focused, but you have a widget, better mousetrap, and there might be somebody in Latin America that would kill to have that better mousetrap. So as long as you're kind of doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, looking to do partnerships can add value. I said Latin America in particular because I've helped companies do that. I have a buddy down there, and we've helped create distribution for companies through Mexico, Latin, and South America. So distribution, partnerships are a way to add value. Financially, there's a lot of moving parts to businesses, and trying to understand those, boil those down, and come up with a comprehensive financial solution. The EOS system, got to have somebody in that chair to do that. Maybe you need to bring in an organization and outsource that function if you don't have it, and there's a lot of people that can help you with that. But having a entire comprehensive financial solution to a business is going to make a world of difference. All right, number 8, the capital markets can be confusing. Guys like Dave has been doing that for decades, and they have their arms around it, but it can be confusing, and that's part of the value I can bring, and part of where I've seen companies have a good success if they've kind of figured out that this is a chess game and not a checkers game, and have been able to move the ball forward. I would add this little thing, the show me the money, the Jerry Maguire quote from that movie, Show Me the Money. It's back to the 31 flavors thing. There's lots of different ways to finance a company. Tons of different ways to finance a company. And unless you're getting help from the outside world, or unless you have that skill set on your team, you might be missing the boat on potential opportunities for financing your business. I know Ben's had some creative things that he's done with some of his clients to do that. So understanding and trying to pull apart the capital markets and all the different options, and then going out and getting the money and knowing that it's a 31 flavors kind of thing and you have a lot of choices. Number 9, questions. This probably comes from me being an inquisitive kid, probably comes from me, the lifelong learning thing, being an analyst, research analyst. I'm really good at asking questions and kind of peeling things apart, but having somebody around you, whether it's on your team or somebody on the outside, to ask the tough questions, to try to figure out whatever hurdles you have and pull those systems apart. You need somebody to ask those questions, because really at the end of the day, it's kind of like a calculus equation, and you just have to get into problem solving mode and pull it apart. I see Scott nodding his head a lot. Sales process and teams and stuff get mucked into the universe a little bit, and if they pull themselves out and really kind of look at it more from a problem-solving perspective, they end up having a lot better luck. And number 10, couple of projects that I worked on and that I know about. And so the 10th and final thing here would be perspective, and perspective that I bring to the table, or perspective that you need people from your team to have, or outside people to have. People familiar with the Breathe Right product? Does anybody know the parent company, CNS, what they were doing before they had the Breathe Right product? Okay, so in the late, you do, right over here, right? Okay, so in the late 80s, I actually wrote research on CNS, and they had sleep apnea brick and mortar facilities that you went to, stayed overnight, and the doctors plugged in all these things, and it was a miserable business. It was really a crappy business. But they had these facilities and these partnerships, and there wasn't really a lot you could do. And then, truthfully, I don't know the story behind how the doctor latched onto the Breathe Right, but then back into the thing that I said earlier about the fate, luck, serendipity, higher power. One Monday night football game, Jerry Rice is wearing a Breathe Right, and all of a sudden CNS is off to the races, and they conveniently kind of pushed aside the fact they were doing any of these sleep apnea things, and now they're a Breathe Right company. Well, guess what? That got sold for like $560 million or something like that. So they had a crappy little business. We're out trying to do new things. They found something, got a little bit of luck, and boom, there you go. All right, Seagate and Xiotech. Anybody know the Xiotech story? Nobody here? All right, anybody know the Compellent story? Phil Soren and team? A couple people nodding their head. Storage area networking company, don't have to go into the details other than Gary Smaby and I brought Xiotech to Seagate in the middle part of the 90s, and we offered, and we're trying to raise money for Xiotech, and tried to get $1 million at a $3 million pre-money value, so they could have bought 25% of the company for $1 million. 3.5 years later, they paid $360 million for the whole company. And the perspective and the gamesmanship of the story here, or the punchline to why that happened, is when Seagate approached Xiotech to buy them. Xiotech said, we're not for sale, we're venture backed, we can go public, we don't need your money. And so what they ended up getting, and what the original offer was about 2x. So the perspective that you want from someone, whoever that is to understand the difference between a 6 and a 9. All right, 9:30 right on the dot. How about that? I will stay as long as you want. Technically, we're supposed to finish at 9:30, so I'll let you finish. I intended to have some Q&A time. This was the first time I'd given this presentation, so whatever. It'll be better next time. With that said, I hope it added value, and I will be here as long as you want to ask questions.